Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. Today we are doing my wrap up for the month of February. February was a great reading month for me. I read 7 books in February, which is pretty much average for me at the moment. I'm not reading quite as quickly as I was last year, but there were 7 books that I really enjoyed on the whole. There was a great set of books in this set. So firstly, I'm going to run through the ones that were on my TBR that I set out at the beginning of the month, and then I'm going to go to a couple of the books that maybe didn't feature on that TBR and may be surprises on this list for what I did read in February. So let's jump in with those ones that were on my to be read list. So the first one of these I'm going to talk about is White Knight by Jim Butcher. This is book number 9 of the Dresden Files. It is an umpteenth time reread for me. I really love this series. Going into this one, I knew that White Knight was decent, I knew that a lot of people loved it, and I knew that I didn't love it as much as some of the other Dresden Files books. Surprisingly, it's not one of my favourites. I definitely rate the books either side of it in the series much more highly than I do White Knight, although that is changing slightly on this reread. On Goodreads, I did have this down as a 4-star read previously. After having read it again this month, I absolutely love this. This is better than I remember it being. I really enjoyed White Knight by Jim Butcher. I think it is a really solid entry into the Dresden Files. Good mid-tier Dresden book, which is still 5 stars for me. You know I love this series, and it has everything we love in Dresden. It's a bit more back to the detective side of things. He's really got a case that he is going up against and he's aiming to solve, and then it escalates and snowballs as it is wont to do in a Dresden book. I really love this one. I am super looking forward to Small Favour next month, which I know is a Dresden Files that I absolutely adore. So I'm really enjoying this reread currently. So now the reread is out of the way, let's move on to the books that were new to me for this month. So there was one book here which I started reading at the beginning of the month and sort of ran through underneath everything right until the end of the month. So this is the new Greatcoats book full of short stories. Tales of the Greatcoats, Volume 1 by Sebastian de Castell. I read this pretty slowly throughout the month. It was the kind of thing that I dipped into, dipped out of, because there was a bunch of short stories in here. It was easy enough to read a little bit here, give it a miss for a few days, come back to it refreshed a few days later. It fitted in between these bigger novels really nicely as well. And all in all, this is a book that is a must read for the Greatcoats fans. If you love the Greatcoats, if the Greatcoats is one of your favourite series, this is an absolute must read. We get some interesting stories from different character perspectives. We get some from our old favourites, our old favourite characters from the series, and some where they are involved but not necessarily the viewpoint character as well, and that is great fun. My personal favourite, I think, was the Wheelwright's Duel, which doesn't actually follow any of our main characters initially, but it is just a wheelwright who is in the wrong place at the wrong time, who's about to enter a duel to prove their guilt or their innocence. It is done very well, and I really like the way that de Castell moves that story. I do love the 2 Falco stories we get as well. They are very good, and if you are a Greatcoats fan, I would highly recommend picking up this short story collection. All in all, I gave it 4.5 stars. It was a great read. Some of the stories stronger than others, but all in all, really good. So next up, let's go on a little bit of a downer. This was the buddy read for the month. This is the buddy read on Alan's channel over at the Library of Alexandria, and it is The Emperor's Blades, the first book of the Chronicles of the Unhewn Throne. Now, this was a book that was pretty universally panned by the early readers in this buddy read. There was not a lot of love for it, and that sort of continued throughout the month, unfortunately. Those who did like it gave it 3.5, 4 stars. It was okay. It was a decent foundation to build off. Those who disliked it really hated it like a ridiculous amount. If you want to know more of my in-depth thoughts, there is a review link down below that you can go and check out. Basically, this was an awful start to a trilogy in terms of the first 60-odd% of this book were pretty grim. They were pretty rubbish. They weren't great. However, the world did hook me in a little bit, and to be honest, the last 30% of this book I actually really did enjoy. It was sort of a 4-star read tagged onto a 2-star read at the start. Unfortunately, there was too much of a slog to get through for me to really give this a good rating, but I am actually looking forward to, in the future, picking up some more books in this series. I think it has the potential to actually be decent. So yeah, unfortunately, Brian Staveley's debut novel got a 2.5-star rating from me. I think in the review, I very generously actually gave it 3 stars, but I think on reflection, it really doesn't deserve that as a book. This is definitely the weakest book I read this month by a long shot, but I am kind of interested to read the series continuing from there, and it may get a shot later on in the year. Being a little bit more positive, I'm moving on to a book that I absolutely loved, and I can see the series that it is in becoming an absolute favourite of mine. This is book 2 of the First Law trilogy. This is Before They Are Hanged, and it is a really solid book. If you enjoyed The Blade itself, you will love Before They Are Hanged. It is the same, it has got all the things you love from The Blade itself, but it's just better. It just has much more plot, there's much more going on, the characters are much more proactive, and Abercrombie really finds his feet here, I feel. I am super excited to move on to The Last Argument of Kings this month in March, and I cannot wait for it. Again, there is a review link down below if you want to see my spoiler-filled thoughts on Before They Are Hanged. There's not much spoiler-free in there because I feel like most of Booktube has read this series by now. But yeah, spoiler-filled thoughts down below if you want to see more of this. An easy 5-star read for me, absolutely no doubt at all. Then the last book I did get to that was on my TBR at the start of the month is Children of Ruin by Adrian Tchaikovsky. This is the follow-up to Children of Time, which is an award-winning, much praised sci-fi epic from Adrian Tchaikovsky. Children of Ruin follows a similar but expanded format. We get the same kind of ideas explored. I really love the way that he deals with technology and this idea of terraforming and life and evolution, especially in different climates and biomes and different environments. It's done very well. As a science fiction concept book, where we are focusing on the technology and the science and the concept, it is absolutely incredible. On a par with Children of Time, in my opinion. I just think it's done so well. If you want a character-heavy sci-fi, this isn't the series for you. There are other sci-fi series by Tchaikovsky that you may love, looking at you, Dogs of War. But if you want a concept-heavy, tech-heavy, science-heavy science fiction, this was brilliant, and it's just as good a follow-up as the initial book, Children of Time. If you've read Children of Time and you haven't got to Children of Ruin yet, I would highly recommend it. Another 5-star read for me this month. So before I move on to the 2 books I read that weren't on my TBR, I'm going to tell you about the books on my TBR that missed out this month. So the first one of these is another Jim Butcher book. It is book 4 in the Codex Alera series, and it's called Captain's Fury. I am actually reading this. I just didn't get it done by the end of February. I'm about 50% of the way through, and I'm really enjoying it. As you may know from my channel, I've really enjoyed the Codex Alera books so far. They have all been 5-star reads for me, and this could easily be the same. Obviously I need to see where it goes, but I really love the Codex Alera series so far, and this is another good entry into the series as far as I have read into it. Now the book that completely missed out this month is a Guy Gavriel Kay title. I love Guy Gavriel Kay, I really want to get to more of his stuff, but I just didn't have time this month. I had said I wanted to read Under Heaven, I just didn't get to it. And the reason I didn't get to it is that I am not as organised as I like to think I am. And that was shown in my February TBR video, where I completely forgot, even though I made my most anticipated releases video of 2022, I completely forgot that Age of Ash by Daniel Abraham was coming out in February. So of course I bought it on release day, and I absolutely devoured Age of Ash. I read it in 2 days flat. Age of Ash is the first book in a projected trilogy called the Kithamar trilogy, and in it we follow Elise, and we follow her coming from the roughest slum-like area of the city of Kithamar, and how she gets wrapped up in a plot that is far above her head. She gets sucked in with her brother Darrow and has to deal with the consequences of it. It is a really interesting book. I think the tone and the world building from Abraham is absolutely on point, as his first books usually are. I think there's a lot of places we could go with this series, and I really love this book as well. This was a 4.5-star read for me. Again, there's a review for that down below as well. I did a lot of reviews this month, so you can go check those out down below if you want to know more in-depth thoughts from me on these books. And then the last book I read this month, this one you cannot blame me for. This wasn't me being disorganized. I just didn't expect to get given an advanced reader copy of this book, but I did. I got given an advanced reader copy from Rebellion Publishing, and this is for Ogres, which is the newest standalone novella from Adrian Tchaikovsky. And I adored this book. Again, there is a review down below if you want to see more in-depth thoughts, but all in all, this is a very short story. It's about 140 pages, and it's told in the second person, which is super interesting and super rare for speculative fiction. I loved it. I loved following our main character, who was me according to the second person, but Torkel, our main character. And basically the world building concept here is that ogres rule the world. They are bigger, they are stronger, they are smarter than people, and therefore they are the masters, they are the rulers, and the people are subservient to this greater race of ogres, this master race of ogres. And I think that the themes that Tchaikovsky explores here are done really well. The prose, as always, is really great from Tchaikovsky. It's not overly flowery, but it's concise and it gets the point across exceedingly well. I really do love Tchaikovsky's prose, and I love the inner monologue we get throughout this story. There's not loads of dialogue. In lots of ways it's similar to Children of Ruin and Children of Time in that respect, but I love Tchaikovsky's ability to bring those themes to life and to get us to think through deep issues in his science fiction and in his fantasy. I would highly recommend this book. It's coming out on March 15th, I believe, so you can go check it out and it'll be a super quick read for you. It's only 140 pages or so, but it is a really good time with it. And that's it, that's my month, that's my reading month done. 7 books completed, 1 still on the way, and actually it's an insanely good reading month for me in terms of ratings. So we had the 1 2.5 star, sorry Emperor's Blades, but then we had 2 4.5 stars in Age of Ash by Daniel Abraham and Tales of the Greatcoats by Sebastian de Castell. Now, Tales of the Greatcoats, there were some stories in there that were easy 5 stars, some a little bit weaker, but really enjoyed it as a whole. And then we've got a bunch of 5-star reads for me. We had 4 5-star reads this month. So that would be White Knight from Jim Butcher, that would be Children of Ruin by Tchaikovsky, that would be Ogres by Tchaikovsky, and that would be Before They Are Hanged by Joe Abercrombie. Really, really solid reading month. Maybe I'm becoming a 5-star strumpet. Who knows? If you want to see any of those more in-depth thoughts, check out the links down below and go check out another video if you want to, and I'll see you guys again soon.